Alright guys, it's that time again, and by that I mean it's time to discuss some new and upcoming Monster Taming games for mobile platforms in 2023 and beyond. And this is something that we typically will do on the channel every now and then to sort of add any new updated information and to introduce some of the newer subscribers on my channel to some of the Monster Taming games in question. Now that being said, while I'm sure veteran fans of this channel will already know about a few of these, there are definitely some new games that you probably didn't know about, or at the very least will have some sort of update that you aren't privy to. Anyways, all that being said, make sure to sit back, relax, and let's talk about 10 upcoming Monster Taming games for mobile. Okay, so I'm going to kick things off with Coromon, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about in the past. However, I do want to take this opportunity to emphasize the fact that the developers have not forgotten about the game on mobile, and it will be launching this year alongside the 1.2 update for Steam and Nintendo Switch. I'm not entirely sure about all the background details, but I think they made some changes to their original vision for mobile, which is what is making it take a little longer than expected. But for right now, we really don't know what everything's going to entail. If you somehow didn't know what Coromon was, it's essentially a Pokemon-like Monster Taming RPG with about 120 Coromon to capture and utilize in battle, a story-driven narrative, and some beautiful pixel art. It even features PvP, which is something we don't see a whole lot of in the genre, and I think when the Android version releases, it's going to cause a spike in the game's popularity in terms of PvP, because from what I remember, the Android version has over 1 million downloads, which is kind of insane. Speaking of which, the game also features multiple different difficulty options, ranging from easy to insane. There's custom mode options allowing you to randomize the game, Final Fantasy-esque super bosses, and a lot more. Obviously, you can check out my review if you want to see what the game has in store, but do know that the full mobile launch will bring forth changes to the endgame, so I might make an updated review when that version fully comes out. There was recently a mobile demo update, which kind of brought the game up to par with what the PC and Switch versions have, but remember, it is a demo, so you're still locked after Volzerk. Next up, we have Scaventurez, a match 3 monster taming roguelike where you must travel through a house of madness in order to apparently fight for your life. A few of the game's features include procedurally generated levels, the ability to unlock new monsters and items after every mission, fast-paced turn-based match 3 puzzle gameplay, over 300 items and abilities to unlock, and over 100 evolutions to the various monsters within the game. Definitely a unique take on the genre. The only other game that I can think of that does something similar is Beasties, but that's also not a mobile title, so definitely check it out if you're interested. Okay, next up is a title that a lot of you guys have asked me to talk about, but the reason I've been a little hesitant, other than I think a video or two that I made talking about the game, is Roco Kingdom, an open-world monster taming MMORPG being developed by Tencent, which is a bit suspect in my opinion, but also the reason why I haven't really talked about it too much is because from what we can tell, it's going to be exclusively available in China with no confirmed Western release. However, that could change. I think it's really interesting that Tencent, of all people, whom also worked on Pokemon Unite, are developing this, because there are some aspects to it that I think the Pokemon company probably wouldn't like, but can't really do much about. I just thought that was interesting. Anyways, all that being said, because it's a mobile game, I'm very curious to see what the monetization practices are like, because whether or not you're a mobile fan, you have to admit a lot of free-to-play mobile games tend to be kind of ridiculous with their mechanics. Next up, we have Skyclimbers, which apparently a lot of people didn't know is in fact coming to mobile platforms. It's slated for an early access release this year, and will definitely be one of the more visually impressive mobile titles. But essentially, if you don't already know, Skyclimbers is sort of a mixed bag of every type of playstyle. You have your monster taming and battling, which features the main character fighting and having monsters fight alongside them. You can even transform into monsters depending on your class. There's also the Minecraft-esque city building and sandbox element to the game, large-scale war battles between enemy factions, and an infinite procedurally generated world to explore. This was featured last month in my top 10 upcoming monster taming games for 2023 and beyond list, so you might remember it from there. However, I don't think it would be a proper 2023 mobile list without including it. Okay, so this next game seems to be a little bit of a meme or parody game, but definitely caught my attention thanks to Bisloba over in our Discord server. But that's Workemon, a monster taming game where you play as a rich CEO's son and must battle against your 8 siblings in order to, I guess, inherit the company, or are the CEO that inherited it and the siblings are jealous, or something like that. I don't know, it's super goofy and sort of gives me those Drugimon vibes with sort of the parody aspect, so it's definitely one to note if you're interested. Okay, so Evocreo 2, who would have seen that coming? It's been featured in mobile list videos before, and each time was due to the fact that we would receive new updates regarding its release window, but this time it looks like we actually do have a release date, since as you can see on screen, there is an official date for launch now. That being said, much like in the past, I am using Evocreo 1 gameplay because there's no Evocreo 2 gameplay just yet. And what Evocreo is it's essentially a Pokemon-like RPG with over 170 monsters to collect and battle with, a 30-hour campaign, the ability to adjust the skills and stats of your monsters, and more. I don't want to dwell too much on it since we have featured it in a few of these list-styled videos already, hence why I space out these videos typically. But either way, what we'll be doing is we'll be doing a Let's Play of the original leading up to the launch of the sequel, and then we'll be doing a Let's Play of that, kind of diving into it, because I haven't played Evocreo 1 just yet. Next up, we got Paracreat, which is a Game Boy Color-inspired RPG with what I'm assuming is a combat system inspired by Dragon Quest monsters. I also happen to be a sucker for Game Boy Color stylized pixel art, so there's also that and the fact that it just looks really cool. The game takes place in a parallel world where the player character was never born and isn't recognized by their own family. Furthermore, said world is inhabited by strange creatures, and ultimately, you're going to need to come to terms with the fate of the two worlds in question. So it's a monster taming RPG with a cool story premise and a pretty unique combat system by the looks of it, so might be worth following development if you're looking for something like that. Next up, we got a game that we recently showcased in the Monster Taming Games You Never Knew segment, which you should totally check out the playlist for tons of games that you probably didn't know about. But anyways, it's an upcoming game called Scallion, I still don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, a 2.5D Monster Taming game that's being developed completely on mobile for mobile. Essentially, from what I've seen, it's currently very early development, so of course we don't have any strict dates for release just yet, but the unique 2.5D aesthetic, coupled with the Pokemon-like combat, should give fans of games like Coromon or Nexomon something to look forward to. One thing I find interesting that does set the game apart seems to be the way that attacks are defined. There's going to be the typical physical, special, and status-based attacks, but there's also a fourth category known as combo, and I don't think that just means multi-hitting moves, since those would fit into physical or special, so I'm interested to see how that ends up working out. Alright, next up we have a few games to talk about that I'm putting together because they're all under the same developer, that being Dragonrod Art, who is a pretty well-known Digimon fan game creator amongst the community. That being said, Digital Tamers is already available on Android and has an itch.io page. You can't download it from the Play Store, you gotta go to the itch page. But if you haven't been in the loop, a sequel to Digital Tamers Reborn, aka Digital Tamers 2, has been confirmed, and while the developer hasn't outright said that mobile is coming, I think it's pretty logical that the sequel of the game would also come to the same platforms. Dragonrod is also developing an RPG known as Digimon Story Shadow Over the Past, which will sort of be like a Pokemon-like Digimon title with single battles and its own unique combat system, which I'm personally really looking forward to. Again, with Digital Tamers 2 and Digimon Story Shadow Over the Past, the developer hasn't come out and said for sure that Android is coming, but at the very least, the first Digital Tamers game is available on Android, so this is either one game or three games, depending on how you look at it. Finally, last but not least, we have Volzerk, Monsters and Lands Unknown, which has been compared to a cross between Pokemon and Genshin Impact. Some people have stated that it's more reminiscent of something like Monster Hunter Stories, but with real-time combat. But whichever way you slice it, this is currently a Japan-only game on Steam by the looks of it. However, there have been rumors that English is coming, and there is an English Steam page, which I'm not sure if that's necessarily relevant. I'm not 100% sure how Steam deals with stuff like that, but like I stated in the video where we introduced this game, it's a free-to-play game both on PC and mobile platforms from Japan, and unfortunately, we've seen how aggressive Japanese games can get, especially when it comes to free-to-play and mobile, so I'm gonna curb my expectations a little bit regarding this game until we get more information. Either way, you can't really argue about the fact that it looks really good, and I look forward to seeing what becomes of it. And there you go, guys. Those were 10, or I guess maybe 12 if you include the two Digimon games that aren't technically confirmed yet, new and upcoming Monster Taming games in 2023 and beyond. Now, of course, some of these games were games that I've covered in the past, and I do these types of videos every year, so there was a little bit of overlap, but there has been a lot of updated information, like with Coromon, Evocreo, and Skyclimbers, and not to mention the fact that we have a lot of new subscribers since the last time I did a video like this, so I do hope everyone found something to their liking, even if veteran fans might have seen a few repeats here. That said, if you do want to stay up to date on the monster taming genre, definitely subscribe to my channel for daily uploads. You can also check out my Twitter, Discord, and Patreon linked below. Special thanks to my patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Dark Persona, and Exodus, and we'll see you next time. Peace.